I didn't dream of being a bridge builder or a pioneer or a trailblazer. I'm a wife, hard-headed sometimes. I am a mother, a sister, a daughter, a friend. And sometimes I'm a cool auntie. In my professional life, I am a caregiver coach and consultant. I'm a certified senior advisor, gerontologist. I am an author. I'm author of the book, Tears in My Gumbo, a caregiver's recipe for resilience. But of all the things that I am, of all the things that I have ever been, there is nothing that has impacted my life so profoundly as that of being a caregiver. Before I began the journey, I had no clue that there are only 4 types of people in the world. Those who have been a caregiver, those who are a caregiver, those who will be a caregiver, and those who will need a caregiver. Which one are you? That question is important because what you should understand is that we currently have 44 million people in this country serving as family caregivers, unpaid I should add. And of those 44 million, 40% are now men. So this is an issue, like it or not, ready or not, that will profoundly impact each and every one of us. And the question is, are we ready? Are we ready? Something else that I want you to know about me is that I am from New Orleans, born and raised, and gumbo is in my DNA. And nobody could prepare gumbo like my mama. My mother had a clear understanding of the correlation between preparing gumbo and nurturing the soul. And so many a times we would gather in my mother's kitchen with my aunts, and it would just be a raucous occasion. It would be a fantastic, good time going on. But what I didn't know was that at that same time, they were cultivating a culture of caring. They were sharing tidbits and life lessons that I couldn't possibly know and understand at that particular time. But it was a privilege. And it was a ritual, and it was family, and it was wonderful. And then one day the phone rang. And we got the news that my mother had a pituitary brain tumor. And that it was impairing her eyesight, that it was growing at such a rate that it would eventually take her life if something wasn't done. Now, my mother was quite shocked by that news, and she was paralyzed in a way when it came to processing and really understanding it. And so my siblings and I clearly understood that we needed to step up to the plate, and we needed to advocate on behalf of my mother. And it meant making decisions on her behalf. So one of the things that we didn't know at that time, we didn't understand what conscious caregiving was. We didn't know what it was. But the definition of conscious caregiving is caring on purpose, with intention, and a plan. There are 5 steps of conscious caregiving that I talk about in my book, but I want to just explain to you here. It's important to me that you understand because we're all in this particular boat together. The first step of conscious caregiving is what we experienced immediately upon hearing that news about a brain tumor. Helplessness. Helplessness. We didn't know what to do, where to turn, and it was a type of inertia that was happening and going on. But one thing about helplessness is that you don't get to stay on that step for very long at all. You are quickly pushed from helplessness 2, recognition. The recognition that you don't know what you don't know. There is so much to learn. It's an entire new universe. It's like being immersed in a foreign country today and then another foreign country where you don't understand the language tomorrow and yet another foreign country the next day. Recognition. Getting comfortable with the idea that you don't know. And then you move to the 3rd step, which is process. And in process, the pieces of the puzzle slowly start to come together. Things start to make sense, and even though you're still uncomfortable, a rhythm starts to happen. And answers start to show up. And there's an understanding that starts to happen. There's also a whole lot of other things that happen in process, and you may be on that step for a really, really long time. But one of the things that happens in process is that you understand that H-E-L-P, help, is not a dirty word, even though it's a 4-letter word. Help is necessary. Accepting help, receiving help, and demanding help if it doesn't show up in the way in which you need it. In addition, what happens in process is you recognize you had better make sure that your loved one's affairs are in order. And as you do that, you recognize that your own personal affairs had better be in order. Process. You learn to recognize that this really is a community effort. It requires oftentimes more than you have the capacity to give. So understand and know you come to grips with what you can give and what you can't. And you're okay with that. After process, slowly but surely, you move into acceptance. Now, that doesn't mean you like what's going on or what's happening. You can't change the trajectory of illness or disease. But what you can do is accept. Acceptance. And then, finally, surrender happens. And that happens in so many different facets. For my family, surrender happened the day we learned it was stage 4 breast cancer. So not just a tumor. We also had to deal with a stroke, diabetes, hepatitis C from multiple blood transfusions. It was one thing after another, after another, after another. And then finally, stage 4 breast cancer. And when that happened, instead of surrendering, I wanted a second opinion. And that's always important. But what I didn't realize at that particular time was my mother had already surrendered. She had had enough. And she was ready to let go. And after the news from the second opinion, okay. I looked at my mom and she said, let's make some gumbo. And that's what we did. And as we began cutting and chopping and going through that lifetime ritual, I reminded my mom that her 71st birthday was just weeks away. And I hesitantly asked her, Mom, do you want to celebrate? My mama looked at me and said, hell yes. We contacted the YWCA Estes Park, Colorado. They have an amazing family reunion cabin. Called them and they said it's a 2-year waiting list. 3 days later, they called back to say there's been a cancellation for the exact dates that you needed it. 61 of my family members showed up from all across the country, because that's how we roll. And we proceeded to have the most amazing 3-day celebration of life that you could ever hope to experience. And it was amazing. Showering my mother with love. And the best part, of course, was that she was there to hear every single word. 5 months and 6 days after returning her to California per her request, she closed her eyes for the final time. There were no regrets. Family showed up as family was supposed to show up. I didn't know at that time and that the 15-year course of caring for my mother would change my life so profoundly. I would become a pathfinder. I would become a bridge builder in this arena of caregiving. I have a mission and a passion to raise awareness about the impact that caregiving is having on the people in our lives. Just this year, I lost a cousin at the age of 58 who had been caring for so many people in her family, but she didn't quite take care of herself as well as she should have, as well as we wished she had. So as we talk about this thing that's happening, this thing that's impacting people and they're not having conversations about it, they're not talking about it, I invite you to participate in the process. The first thing that I'd like you to do is think about the caregiver in your life. What can you do to support that individual? How can you help out? How much of your time can you give up to make a difference? The second thing that I'd like you to do is to think about your aging parents. They've been competent and capable all of your lives. But as they age, the reality is they will need more of your help. And sometimes they're going to fight you on that. But be there for them. And then the third thing is, think about your own circumstances. Who's going to look after you? Put your plans in writing. Have a conversation with the people that you're interested in. That's a whole nother TED Talk. But have a conversation with the people that mean the most to you, that will carry out your wishes as you want them to be carried out. In your businesses, in your churches, we want to create a culture of caring. Carosity is the name of the campaign I launched just a year ago. And Carosity is simply about getting back to caring. Getting back to a state of being where we simply are kind to each other, where we simply embrace and hug each other, and we're there and available when we are needed. Thank you.